you know that when parents are asked what they would do if they had 1 extra hour every day, most parents say they would use it for sleep? Are you exhausted trying to balance kids, work, and play? Do you want more purpose and less monotony in your life? Do you get overly irritated, frustrated, and angry with your children? If you've answered yes to some of these questions, then I'm glad you're here. I know how busy you are, and I'm not here to take your time. I'm here to help you take it back. Close your windows, open your mind, and let's kick some ass. All right, welcome to Kick-Ass Dad, passionate parenting in a volatile world. And I'm just so excited to be doing this. Certainly something that's a bit out of my comfort zone, but I'm just passionate about the topic, and I think we just have an opportunity to roll right in here. So I told you last time that we were going to talk about something called personal narrative, okay? So what is a personal narrative? A personal narrative is the thoughts you think about yourself, about who you are, and how the world works. So when I get up in the morning, it's not on the top of my head. My thoughts start coming based on my personal narrative. But your personal narrative, that's your entirety of your belief systems that create your self-talk and how you feel about yourself and how you think about yourself and how you think about the world. So when thinking about a personal narrative, it's the thoughts you tell yourself based on your beliefs about how the world works. Okay, so there's also such a thing called a collective social narrative. So by comparison, this is groupthink, right? This is what a whole community or country, or this is an entire social network. This is the overall thinking paradigm of that network. And let's just illustrate real quick. Very few people listening to this remember, but in the 1920s, we had a huge stock market crash in this country, and as soon as that stock market crashed, people made a run on the banks, which actually caused the Great Depression. So there's no integral science behind this. This is the power of people's beliefs that actually, because of their belief in what happened to the stock market, they're actually the ones that took down the entire banking system at that time. So a lot of individuals make up that collective social narrative, and they actually drive the results and experiences that people create in life. So what I'm driving at is that humans very literally create the reality in which they live in, and by your own personal narrative actually drives the reality that you experience. And then we're also co-creators. So you've got all these people with all these different personal narratives moving around, and these different belief systems which are driving these personal narratives, and there's an overall societal narrative that kind of moves forward, and that is a co-creation. So we're all individual creators, but we're also co-creators in the world. So just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that to open it up, and then just really dial in on the personal narrative, because as we can't control society. We can't control everything outside of ourselves. So we create our realities, but we co-create them with other people. But we've got to understand that it is our personal narrative, our own beliefs, that we actually have control over. And if you want to, create that influence over a greater, social network, then you've got to master your own personal narrative and what your narrative is doing to drive your results and your experiences in your life. So just as another example, think about like Mother Teresa, right? So think about the driving beliefs and the personal narrative that she would have to have in order to take the actions that she's taken in her life. So, for example, she would have to have a belief that personal sacrifice is more important than personal comfort, right? Or she wouldn't be able to do what she does or did. I believe that the greatest joy in the world comes from serving the least. She would need to have that belief in order to create those actions and get the results that she gets in her life lived. So the beliefs drive the experience, and she literally created the beliefs that drove the actions. She believed she was a hand of God. She was an extension of God in the world, and she could find joy and peace and love in her actions based on that driving narrative in her heart and in her mind. Her actions touched thousands, poor people, and just gave them. She spent her whole life feeding the hungry and the homeless, and it takes a special kind of person, and it takes a special kind of person to have the beliefs and the social narrative that drive those actions. So I want you to start asking yourself, from this perspective, and I'm asking you to make a perspective shift as opposed to looking at the world as this giant set of things that are sent your way that you have to deal with. I want you to make a shift and start thinking about how your personal narrative is driving your actions, that's painting the picture of your living reality. And we're going to jump right in here to Kick-Ass Dad's parenting myth number 3. My ability to be a great parent is determined by the circumstances of my life. So for a lot of us, we have so many things that are stumbling blocks and roadblocks, and we just feel like we can't get past them, and they're actually creating these negative effects in our life. And we want to focus, say, oh, well, we want to prove that it's the outer circumstance that is creating our inner experience, and we can't do the things that we want to do because we're being bombarded with all these negatives or these experiences that are causing us to stumble. And so when I say that it's a myth that your ability to be a great parent is determined by the circumstances of your life, it's a myth because you can make changes every day in your personal narrative to affect change in your life and to be a better parent. So some examples of people, think about this. Think about the amount of people who are under the poverty line in the world. And, you look at some of these folks in Africa and Asia, and they're literally starving to death. Yet, I'll watch Discovery Channel, or I'll watch some different things, and, just to see some of the smiles on some of these kids and the adults' faces, like, how could you be that happy? How could you be that happy when you have so little? So what I would ask for you to do, instead of comparing yourself to, people in the world who you want to be more like, which is a good thing when you're trying to emulate their behaviors and model and grow because of them, but also look at the people in the world who have nothing, yet they create extraordinary experiences for themselves. Sometimes we need to look below our means of living and look to people who have less but are doing more, right? They have less than we have, but they're doing more. Why are they different, right? Is it just because they're ignorant? And that's what a lot of, they're ignorant. They don't know. They haven't had wealth. They don't have television. That's true. They don't have these things. So you're right, but their personal narrative is different, right? Their mindset is different. They don't need more to create joy in their lives. And obviously, there's so much suffering going on in the world. I don't ever want to take away from that suffering and say, these people are penniless and, they're happy, because that's not the case at all. Not everybody's happy. But even at the lowest level of income, you can see joy and happiness in people's lives. Whereas some of us, let's say we've lived these great lives and then we fall to that level, and then we just fall into these spiraling depressions and we make run on the banks and, we throw ourselves out windows, right? But it's that personal narrative and that belief system that's driving it that really makes all the difference in the world. And if you can begin to shift and tweak yours into a more empowered personal narrative, into a more empowered way of thinking that puts the ball back in your court, and you actually have impact and effect and purpose in your life, that's what's going to give you that shift in results that you're looking for to be that better parent and to get into shape and to get that better job or to advance your career and to get promoted or to start that business or whatever it is that your desire is. You've got to create the mental energy that goes along with it, and that comes from purpose, and that comes from tweaking your personal narrative and your belief systems. So Well, what do we need to do? So, we talk about the circumstances of life. We can't allow them to determine our happiness. We must develop the internal muscles of appreciation, that mental muscle of being thankful for what we do have, and transform our actions to reflect the abundance that we have as well. So, yeah, we may not be rich monetarily, but we've got to shift our mind into thinking more abundantly to attract that abundance more into our life. A great book, and I haven't read the book. I've read, I've heard people give synopsis of the book, but Think and Grow Rich is a great one. So if you're just starting to understand how the mind creates the reality, that's definitely a great one to look into. I love Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, another great one that really kind of sets the stage for that kind of level of being and that level of thinking. So what I want you to come away with is that even in the worst situations, there's always something to be thankful for. If you've ever read The Diary of Anne Frank, you'd be absolutely blown away by how much hope this little girl has in humanity. And the circumstances that she lived through were just devastating. She hid from the Nazis for years, and even after all of that, she still saw hope and possibility in humanity. And if people, who have been through so much can have these personal narratives, I ask you, what's stopping you? What's stopping you from, just bitching about every single thing that comes across the table? And yeah, we have we're super religious or we love, whatever it is that brings us faith and hope. But then when things aren't going our way, we just it all goes out the window. And it's great that you have your faith, but you've also got to find a way to, temper the mind. I believe we're three-part beings. I believe we have a mind, body, and soul. And if those things aren't in balance, if you're all soul, then you're not in balance with your mind and body. And if you're all body, then you're not in balance with your mind and soul. You're not going to experience your full range of possibility. And it's so important. I see people at the gym and they just work out, yet, they're not sharpening their mental saw. They're not sharpening their spiritual saw. And if you're an atheist, think of it as emotional, your emotional saw. The idea is not to be inclusive. We're trying to be inclusive here. And that's why I'm not going to go into, different faiths or religions, because that's not what this is about. This is about balancing our mind, body, and spirit, getting our personal narrative under control so that we can then affect change in the world, and using our purpose to affect that change, and using it as leverage to affect that change. So if I want to change my mindset, I've got to own the thoughts that come through my head. And I can notice the thoughts that go through my head. So what I do is, if I'm having negative thoughts or, this, that, or the other, I'm going to identify those thoughts. I'm going to acknowledge that they no longer reflect my greatest vision for my best self, and then I'm going to make a deliberate, immediate change in my thinking process. Okay? Immediate, deliberate change in my thinking process. I'm the only one who owns the thoughts I think. And if I can choose to believe a more positive thought, I'm going to have more energy, and I'm going to be able to create the change that I wish to see in the world, to quote Mahatma Gandhi. So, for example, let's say I'm working on a report. Let's say I'm at work, I bust my butt on this report, and maybe I rush through my work a little bit, and my boss sends it back to me, and he points out some errors, right? So we've all had this happen. None of us are perfect. We've all had feedback, right? Feedback is priceless. So let's say my first thought is a negative one. I can't believe that I did that. I'm such an idiot. God, what makes you think about me? I can't believe I went right by that. How could I have screwed that up? I'm going to get myself fired. So what happens is the guilt ensues after that, right? And your energy begins to get drained. You're feeling upset. And because your energy is drained, you don't have the energy to go dive right back in and start working on the project. So you kind of procrastinate. Does that sound familiar to anybody? So I'll get, let's say, I'm just so frustrated, and then I get out of work and some buddies are going to have beers. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to have some beers. F this. I'm done for the day, right? We've all been there. So you feel better for a little bit, right? And by the next day, you get a little bit of a hangover. Your focus is not as keen. You didn't get as much sleep as you wanted. You may even rush through that project again the next day, and you're not getting your best result, right? So it's just kind of this cycle of not getting great results due to lack of low energy levels and procrastination and lack of focus. And instead of doing that, what if you took a different approach, right? So instead, let's say you take the perspective of owning the thoughts that are going through your mind, right? So you notice that, I can't believe I did that, I'm such an idiot. You notice that, right? And over time, we can begin to reprogram our reactions. So instead of being so reactionary, we can be creative in how we think. And so by repeating certain thought patterns, they become a little more automatic over time. So let's go through the same scenario. And okay, so you get the report back, right? And your boss has pointed out your errors. And you've created over time reactions to situations like this. So what I want you to do is think about it differently. So you've absorbed these other patterns over time. Maybe your parents called you an idiot when you were a kid, whenever you made a mistake, or your teachers did, or whoever did it. They plug those things into your head, right? So you've literally taken the treatment of other people towards you over time, and now you're treating yourself that way in your brain with those reactions. So your boss sends you that, and you immediately, I'm looking at something, Mataluni, you're such an idiot. And a lot of times if you're saying your own name when you're talking to yourself in your head and it's negative, it's usually because somebody else said that to you using your name, and it just stuck right there, and you kind of held that in over time. And those beliefs, they churn over time. Those thoughts turn into beliefs, and after a while, you're completely programmed by others, but you're waking up every day, you have no clue. You don't realize that the thoughts that are going in your head, those negative thoughts about yourself, are actually thoughts that other people gave you a long time ago. And this is a crucible moment. This is a moment of self-realization, and yeah, these thoughts came from others, but you're aware of it now. You have an opportunity to make a change. And all I want you to do is notice as it comes in. You get the email and you immediately say to yourself, I can't believe I did that. You're such an idiot, Mataluni, right? So now I'm going to notice that thought, all right? This is not my thought. It's a creation of my mind, right? I'm repeating what others have convinced me over time is true. And I could walk down two roads right now. One, I could say, I am an idiot, so this proves my belief about myself, right? Or you could say, this is an opportunity for me to change my way of thinking. This doesn't prove anything about me. This was a simple mistake because I was rushing. This is not who I am. This is a creation of my mind. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to create a new thought. I'm an excellent employee. I make some mistakes, but I do great work that I'm proud of. Whenever I fall down, I get back up. And my work's going to get better every single day. And I always finish up with, I'm happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. That's mine. You're welcome to have it. And I've told you why. I always lead with happy, because we're all after a feeling. There's nothing in the world that's more than a feeling. Going on that great adventure, or going traveling, or making money, or it's all to fulfill a feeling of security, of adventure, of happiness, of whatever it may be. It's a feeling that you're after. So I always lead that off. I'm happy. I'm happy first. I'm happy. I don't need to have all the money in the world. I need to have all the health in the world. I need to be wise. I was a smoker for years. I'm smoking cigarettes, and even as I'm smoking cigarettes and drinking a lot and partying all the time, I'm still telling myself I'm happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. And I'm telling myself that all the time, even when it contradicts my direct experience. I quit smoking 37 days ago. And I truly believe it's because, and I'll give you some more of what I did, but I truly believe it's because even when my outer reality didn't reflect my internal reality, I used my internal reality, my thoughts, to make a change. So I am, in the present moment, I'm happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise, and then all of a sudden it's like easier, it's easier to quit smoking. I'm working out every day. I feel happier, I've got more energy, and it's because that I'm building myself up even when my outer reality doesn't reflect my inner reality. I'm designing my life how I want it to be by telling myself what I believe I am and can be. And even when I didn't truly believe it, I still said it every single day. And then over time, I see my outer reality beginning to transform as my inner reality has as well. So, how important is it to have, tons of energy? And if you can't create that energy from within, you're going to try to create it from without, and you're just going to be always searching, riding the highs and the lows of life. So what I'm asking you to do is consistently over time use new thoughts, and instill them in your mind, and they gain power, and you begin to believe them over time. And you may get like goosebumps, or you feel a rush of energy when you do this. It happens to me all the time. And from a spiritual perspective, you can call it the Holy Spirit. From a physical perspective, when you are thinking positively, dopamine is released in your brain, and chemicals are released that energize your body, and then you get the goosebumps. And so however you choose to look at it, and I'm not telling you to look at it either way, but understand that these are actual tools that you can use to motivate yourself and to recreate and repurpose who you are, and be your greater self. Your brain, it really is. It's a pharmaceutical factory. There is nothing that your brain can't synthesize. And positive self-thought actually leads to increased levels of dopamine, other brain chemicals that increase pleasure and focus in the brain. And quite literally, you're choosing to tune your brain to a more productive way of thinking, a more productive frequency, and that's leading you to doing better work and getting greater results in your life. And think how much different your life would be if you truly lived this statement: I am not a product of my path. My path is a product of me. What if you live that every day? What if you truly believe? Think about it outside of yourself. Think about that dude who he absolutely believes, I am not a product of my path. My path is a product of me. What kind of results does that person get? What kind of personal narrative is that to create in yourself? And is it more likely that that person is going to be empowered or disempowered? And let's be honest now, it can depend. I mean, if you believe you're the source of your life experience and it caused you to take ownership and accountability in your life, then that leads to extraordinary personal power and energy, the ability to overcome obstacles and to create the life you want to lead. There is another side to this, and I've been through this myself because I've been working on creating these beliefs myself for a long time, and there are times when I say this to myself and I'm going, well, I'm not getting the results I want, so F this sucks, right? So I'm responsible for my whole life, I'm responsible for everything that's going on, yet I'm not getting the results I want, so what's wrong with me? And so that leads to kind of a lowered energy level and kind of a depressed feeling, and that can be really frustrating. So realize that when you're working on your self-development, you're going to learn a lot more about yourself that you may not be ready to learn, and it can be hard, but the payoff is so extraordinary that there's going to be there's so much more pleasure associated with it than pain in the long run, that it's so worth it to absolutely go for it. And sure, if you're getting crappy results and you believe that you are creating this in your life, then instead of just feeling depressed about it, make a change, figure it out, dial it in. Well, what is it then? What is it going on? How am I sabotaging myself, right? Because we sabotage ourselves all the time. We'll talk more about that in future podcasts. But I really want you to take that into consideration, what you can do to own everything, every thought, every action in your life, and not put it off on somebody else, and not blame and not point fingers. And I really feel over time you're just going to be incredibly empowered by doing that. So I certainly encourage you, and I encourage myself on a daily basis to take that responsibility for the experience I've had while creating a sense of self-love. So yes, I'm not a product of my path. My path is a product of me, and I love myself now as I am. Not as at some point in the future. I don't need to accomplish a certain thing in order to love myself. I'm going to love myself now. This way, in the future, I'll have that energy, and I'll be able to be the person I know I can be. But without loving yourself today, it's very difficult to create the energy levels, the purpose, and the focus to get to go where you want to go tomorrow. And I just want to repeat that it's okay to make mistakes. every awful experience that I've put myself through and been in has given me some nugget of wisdom, something that I could take with me. And you want to be a student of life. I don't think you're here to learn. I think you're here to experience and create and love and just be invigorated and do and smell and taste and touch. I don't think life is about learning, but learning is what we use to leverage our energy and our purpose and our life. And to be a student of that, I think, is one of the most important things that you can do when faced with these negative experiences. And I want to be really clear. So I'm never trying to say when you own your life, it is not about saying, and I have certain beliefs about, the soul and how we're born into these lives, and we choose to be born into the lives we are. But I never want people to think that they deserve to be in these terrible situations and raped and just in these brutalized situations where they've just been hurt and hurt and hurt. What I'm encouraging you to do is, if you're in these situations, own your victimhood. Don't let yourself be a victim, right? So I want you to know that there are so many people in this world, and there are quadriplegics and just people who have been through hell and back, who don't blame and they don't point fingers, and they're not victims. They choose not to be a victim. So, and it depends on where you are in your journey. Not everybody's ready to hear this, right? Not everybody's ready to hear, to own every single thing and say, you know what? This happened to me as a kid. It was screwed up, right? It's garbage. It's a garbage way to live. But think about what that gives you, and everybody may not be ready for this, but if you are, think about what that gives you. What kind of leverage do you now have? What kind of, to take that nugget of wisdom from that horrible, horrible experience of abuse or betrayal or just whatever, really scary thing that can happen to a person. What can you do to now leverage that instead of being a bitter victim, and living in fear and guilt? How much more would your life be worth if you could take that experience and help somebody else move on from it and own their personal reality and their personal narrative? I just think that's the most important thing you could ever do for anybody. Again, I know, and I don't want to apologize, because I do believe that if you're ever going to be, personally empowered, you can't play the victim, even if you've been through hell and back. And I think I've seen so many strong and amazing people who've been through hell and back who are no longer victims, but it's a process, right? So you go through a series of, emotions over, it could be 20 years, could be 5 years. I think that's what's up to us. How long it takes for you to get through that victimhood into a place of empowerment, so that you can have the energy and love to give to your kids, and you don't repeat the same mistakes that your parents did with you, or that your abuser did with you. And I don't want to just speak to kids who are abused. I want everybody to truly know that it is up to us to own our personal narrative, to own our mindset, so we could be the people that we want to be, and the empowered people. So I want to do a quick exercise. So take a couple minutes. So what you want to do is, I want you to take 2 of your most powerful beliefs. Think of one that absolutely sets you on fire, something you love to do. Whatever it is that you love, just write it down. And if you're driving, just do it when you get home. But now I want you to take your biggest fear, right? And I want you to pause the podcast, write them both down. What sets you on fire, and what your biggest fear is. Write it down. Pause the podcast. All right, now I want you to ask yourself, do these 2 things truly represent your core passion and your core fear? If they do, then you've completed that portion of the exercise. Great job. If not, I want you to really think about this. You're going to have to dig a little deeper, and just think about, what is your number one driving passion and number one driving fear. Take the time to get to the bottom of this, if you need to. So now I want you to get really real with it, because if we're not getting really real with it, it's just kind of a waste of time. And I told you I wasn't going to waste your time. I was going to help you take it back. So I'm asking you to do this now. Pause the podcast. Make sure this gets done. Okay, so if what I'm saying is true and it's about your personal narratives and it's about how you think about yourself that drives your actions, that drives your results in life, your experiences, I want you to figure out how these beliefs help shape your reality. The two that you came up with, how do these beliefs or these passions or fears, how are they currently shaping your reality? Okay? Change the narrative and change your world, thus affecting everything, every result you have in your life. Quite literally, you can change your life by getting over this fear and embodying this passion. So it's really hard to change your thinking at first. I want you to know that it's not a simple thing, and I want you to use the exercise that we gave you at the end of the first podcast about feeling it, focusing on it, letting it go, destroying that belief, and then creating the new belief. So if you haven't listened to that first podcast, please go back and do so, because that's a really important way to change those beliefs. But again, it's not easy at first, but it does get easier. And as you gain momentum, it becomes almost automatic. Your brain just knows it, it does it, it feels it, and it becomes really easy. It's just like anything in life. When you start at it, unless you're natural, you're terrible, right? I suck at so many things, but until I really put my energy and invest in it, I'm not going to see any return. So I'm asking you, if you're taking the time to listen to this podcast, I'm asking you to actually invest in yourself and get some return out of it. Because I promise you, if you do these exercises, you're going to get some results and it will get easier. We truly live in an if-then society. It's like everybody, this is how people walk around. They go, well, if I don't get this house, then I'm not going to be happy. And if I don't ace this test, then I won't get into a good school. And if this guy gets elected, then my community's not going to be prosperous. And, we're just a nation of if-then thinkers. Science is really beginning to discover that this is a recipe for disaster. Cognitive research is beginning to tell us that we need to be positive and happy first in order to create the energy levels to get to our desired outcomes. So can negative people get outcomes? Of course they can. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it becomes easier and you're getting more out of life on your journey when you're in a positive state. And it creates that mental clarity and energy to create the behaviors and the systems of behavior that lead to success. According to clinical psychologist Romer and Orsillo, this was a study done several years ago. They were studying generalized anxiety disorder, and their conclusion was that GAD stems directly from this sort of thinking. People who engage in too much anxious thought about future fears or potential threats or fear of loss have little mental energy left to leverage the present moment and to experience the life they'd like to live. Because so much of one's life is spent attending to worrisome thoughts, much of the life is spent living in an illusion. This is because the things about which I'm thinking do not directly respond or do not directly correlate to our reality. So that's a deep thought, and that comes from some psychologists a few years ago. And so that kind of leads me into Kick-Ass Dad's parenting myth number 4, which is your perception of the world, that is your personal narrative, is an accurate representation of the world and is an accurate representation of the ratio of positive to negative in the world. Okay, so again, your perception of the world, your personal narrative, this is a myth, is an accurate representation to the ratio of positive to negative in the world. And I know this is not directly related to how to be a great parent, but remember, we talked about you've got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you can put it on your child. So we're working on creating a personal narrative that gives us the ability to be great parents and to energize us so that we can then do the things and create the environments that our kids are going to absolutely thrive in. And if we were to take these understandings and change our mindsets from mindsets of scarcity to mindsets of abundance and mindsets of to create beliefs about ourselves that reflect happiness as opposed to worrying about a particular result, we're going to get a whole lot more out of life. And It's so important because you're more energized to achieve the goals that you want to accomplish. And by taking just a few minutes every day to mentally reflect and say a few words to yourself with conviction, you can change your mental mindset and see real results in your life. And here's a few just to try. Number one, there's nothing I need that I do not have. That's such a powerful one. There is nothing that I need that I do not have, because that tells your brain, you're literally wiring your brain to think that you've got everything you need at hand. And you don't need anything else to get you where you want to go. You can be there. And that leads me right into the second one. There's nowhere that I have to go that I'm not already. So this creates that belief in the self that I'm already here now. I'm where I need to be. I'm present. I'm in the moment. And you look at this positive psychology kind of leads back to like Buddhism and some of these more older philosophies, and how important it is to being in the present moment. And these are practical tools to get you there. I love I am happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise, and we talked about why already. Do these when you're in the car. And one of the things I want to teach you is to lock these things into your physical body. So what I'll do is I'll just if I'm in front of the mirror, if I'm in the shower, I'll raise my hands up in the sky or jump up and down, when I'm outside, or just, while I'm working out and I'm doing bench presses and I'm saying these things to myself. So I'm creating that anchor, that, the next time I'm active, these thoughts come more easily to my mind. And that's a technique I actually learned from Tony Robbins. And it's so powerful, and it really works. And do these things while you're smiling. Do them while you hold your arms wide open. You're standing up tall, and get your mind and body actively connected with your movement and your positive thought. The dopamine's going to flood your brain. You're going to feel better. You're going to look better. Your positivity will infect somebody else. You're going to create great environments, great relationships in your life. And I just see this all the time. Sean Akers, he's a guy that talks on TED Talks. He's a psychologist, and he's into positive psychology. I encourage you to look him up. His name is Sean Aker. Just an amazing guy, true entertainer and philosopher and psychologist. And he says it's the domino effect. When you're in a state of positivity, you're 30% more likely to be cognitively effective and 30% more likely to have higher levels of creativity. And when this happens, it also begins to happen to people around you. They get more positive, and they're lifted up, and they're more energetic. Think how much more productive you, your teams, your friends would be, your church groups. How much more productive would you be operating in this way? And it all circles back around. When you're doing these things to create positivity in your mind, your body, you begin to influence your daily reality in that light, and your positive thoughts about yourself turn into beliefs, and your beliefs begin to drive your actions, and they drive your results. And the power of your personal beliefs is so extraordinary, and that's why I'm spending so much time on this, and I'm so passionate about it, because I just want to share it with you. And what you believe about yourself, and how you can recreate your life experiences with your mind-body affirmations, it's inspiring to me. And your life will actually begin to shift. You're going to get more positive results. Your outer life will begin to reflect your inner life, like I was talking about earlier. And it always has. Now, your outer life has always reflected your inner life, but before, it was negative, right? Your negative attitudes were causing you to have less energy and get less out of your work and get less out of the people around you and not create good enough relationships. So now you're switching it, so you're doing things more positively, and then so you're creating those things in your life and around you. So, the secret to how fast you get the results in your life is directly related to how focused you are on creating this inner sense of self-promotion and self-love. And as you create this belief system that rejects thoughts of personal inferiority and embraces personal power, you cultivate that sense of inner peace and joy. And I like to meditate every single day. And we'll talk more about that in the future. And a lot of people think, I can't meditate. There's no way I can meditate. And, it's bunk. It's baloney. It's not that difficult. It's really just sitting down with yourself. And we'll do guided meditation in the future. So I don't want to, spend too much time here today. But, start considering those things. And, isn't it better than, isn't it embracing your personal power and creativity better than just feeling bad that you didn't get that car or that house or that politician that you wanted? Because the fact is that if people like this came together, we could do more good than any organization on the planet. You change the world by changing yourself. Mahatma Gandhi, man, he had it right. You be the change you wish to see in the world. And I always think about that Saturday Night Live skit with Stuart Smalley. Remember that SNL character, and the positive affirmations. I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. And it's so funny because I think the personal power movement gets a bad rap from stuff like this. I mean, it's a hilarious skit. I mean, just get over it. It's funny. It's not something to get bent out of shape over, but I think what's funny is that, people think this stuff is dorky, right? They think it's lame to take ownership of your thoughts, as a flamboyant character, and I think that, when people are growing, for me, I grew up watching this stuff, and it kind of turned me off to stuff like that. So I didn't start, using positive affirmations until way later in life. I thought it was super geeky and nerdy, but at the end of the day, it paints a picture. That affirmation is a tool of the weak-minded, and that it's really a joke, and that's a particularly limiting belief, and it can rob you of your effectiveness and using this tool. It's funny because consciously choosing your thoughts is not an easy thing to do, and it's kind of made fun of. But it's much more difficult to make a choice in how you think than it is to just let the default thoughts come in, the thoughts of all the other people who have told you what you are in your life, that you may or may not be. And I think it's just sad that people shy away from developing the self because of silly skits like that. So it's funny, it's a joke. Lighten up, people, and take some responsibility for your life, and move on. It's just funny to me. So, not to get too far off subject, I encourage you, to change the beliefs that you don't have power over your own mental mindset and your own personal narrative. And remember, a thought breeds an action breeds a habit, and a habit leads to a result. Your results, that's what's going to leave your legacy. And what you focus on in the world expands. So if you think about the things that you're scared of all the time, and the things that go through your head, and those default thoughts I talk about, they expand in your mind, and you lie in bed at night awake because it's all you can think about. And you have to find ways to break these cycles. And positive affirmation is a great way to do it. And using the belief destroyer exercise that I shared with you in the last podcast is an excellent tool to do so. And using these mental techniques can free you up from a world of worry and fear and doubt and shame and guilt. It's just that crap that goes through your body and your mind, and you just can't sleep, and you don't know how to stop it. You don't know how to turn it off. And if you actually believe fully that you could not fail, no matter how difficult the journey would be, how successful would you be? And I challenge you to start thinking that way. And how much more energy would you have? How much more productive would you be? And again, I mean, if what you focus on expands, why not focus on the positive and expand those things in your life and expand those relationships and progress your career or whatever it is you're looking to do, move it forward. And your relationship with your children, it creates the environments that spawn great experiences, and just they ultimately lead to a kick-ass life. And I'm going to sign off with that, and I really appreciate you guys hanging with me, and I love doing these podcasts, and I'm going to continue to do them. And if you resonate with us, go to iTunes, give us a review. We would thoroughly appreciate it. It positions us on iTunes to reach the most people possible. Visited us on our website. It's Kickass Dad Blog, KICKASSBLOG.com. Email me. Send me what your thoughts are, what you want, what kind of content you want to hear. We can do interviews. If you got an inspiring story, let me know. Don't be afraid to get engaged. That's what this is all about. This is not a one-way street. I'm not here to holler at you. I'm here to grow with you and be my best self a little more every single day. So thank you so much for listening, and make it a kick-ass day.